The billionaire CEO let her go without knowing she was expecting his child. Years later, the reunion was unforgettable. She stood in the rain outside his office building, one hand pressed against her stomach, the other clutching a positive pregnancy test. Inside, Howard Murphy was signing papers that would send him to London for 5 years. He'd ended things that morning. Clean break, he'd said. No complications. But Sophie Andrews had a complication growing inside her that would change everything. 4 years later, a little boy with his father's gray eyes would ask the question that shattered her carefully built world. "Mama, why don't I have a daddy?" And the same week, Howard Murphy would walk back into Charleston with a business deal that required Sophie's signature. The reunion would destroy them both, or save them. But first, you need to know how a love this deep could fall apart so completely. Before we dive in, if you're new here, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And please, stay until the end because this story has twists you won't see coming. To my returning viewers, thank you for being here. You're the reason these stories exist. Now, let's begin. The spring rain hammered Charleston's cobblestone streets the morning Sophie Andrews realized her entire life had just shattered into a million pieces she'd never fit back together. She sat in her car in the hospital parking lot, hands shaking so hard the paper in her grip rattled like leaves in a storm. The words swam before her eyes. Positive. Pregnant. 8 weeks. 8 weeks ago, she'd still believed Howard Murphy loved her. 8 weeks ago, they'd spent that weekend at his beach house, wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets that cost more than her monthly rent, watching the sunrise over the Atlantic while he traced patterns on her bare shoulder and whispered things about forever that she'd been foolish enough to believe. 8 weeks ago, she hadn't known that loving a man like Howard, brilliant, driven, incapable of putting anything before his empire, would be the thing that broke her. This morning, he'd ended it. Clean. Clinical. The same way he ran his business. "I'm moving to London for the European expansion," he'd said, standing in her tiny apartment kitchen like he didn't belong there. He didn't. Howard Murphy belonged in boardrooms and penthouses, not in her world of second-hand furniture and student loans she'd be paying off until she was 50. "It's a 5-year commitment, minimum. We both knew this was temporary, Sophie. It's better to end things now before it gets complicated." Complicated. Sophie pressed her palm against her stomach, where something the size of a raspberry was currently appending every plan she'd ever made for her 32-year-old life. Too late for uncomplicated. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had your whole world change in an instant? Drop a comment and tell me about it. She should have called him. Should have marched into his office at Murphy Industries before he got on that plane and told him the truth. But Howard had made his position clear that morning. He didn't want complications. He didn't want anything tying him to Charleston when his future was in London. And Sophie Andrews had enough pride left not to trap a man with a baby he'd never wanted, so she sat in her car and cried until her eyes swelled shut and her throat burned raw. And then she drove home and started planning a future as a single mother to a child whose father would never know he existed. "Mama, why don't I have a daddy?" Sophie's hands stilled on the dinosaur puzzle piece she'd been trying to fit into the T-Rex's tail. Her son, her beautiful, perfect, impossibly smart son, looked up at her with gray eyes that were an exact replica of the man she'd spent 4 years trying to forget. Oliver Murphy Andrews. She'd given him Howard's last name as a middle name. It was the only piece of his father he'd ever have. "Some families have mommies and daddies," Sophie said carefully, her practiced answer. "Some have 2 mommies or 2 daddies. Some have grandparents or aunts and uncles. Our family is you and me, and that's perfect." But Jackson at preschool said everybody has a daddy, even if they don't live together. Sophie's heart cracked clean down the middle. Oliver was 4 years old, 4 years and 2 months to be exact, and he'd inherited more than just his father's eyes. He had Howard's sharp mind, his relentless curiosity, his stubborn refusal to accept simple answers. "Your daddy lives very far away," Sophie said quietly. "And he doesn't know about you." "Why?" "Because Mama made a choice a long time ago. Sometimes grown-ups have to make really hard choices." Oliver considered this with the seriousness of someone much older. Then he went back to his puzzle, apparently satisfied. Sophie wasn't satisfied. She'd never been satisfied with the choice she'd made. But every time she looked at Oliver, at his wild dark curls, his infectious laugh, the way he approached the world like it was one giant adventure waiting to happen, she couldn't regret it. Howard Murphy had given her the greatest gift of her life, even if he'd never know it. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. Her best friend Paloma's name flashed across the screen. Girl. Turn on Channel 7 News. Right now. Sophie frowned and reached for the remote. Oliver was engrossed in his puzzle, making sound effects for the dinosaurs. She turned on the TV, volume low, and there he was. Howard Murphy stood on the steps of Charleston's historic City Hall, looking exactly the same and completely different all at once. Same sharp jawline. Same gray eyes that had haunted her dreams for 4 years. Same perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than her car. But there was something harder about him now. Something cold in the set of his shoulders that hadn't been there before. Returning to Charleston after 5 years heading Murphy Industries' European operations, the reporter was saying, Mr. Murphy's company is partnering with the city on a massive waterfront development project that officials say will bring thousands of jobs to the area. Sophie's phone exploded with texts. Paloma, is that him? Oliver's dad? Paloma. OMG Sophie, he's back. Paloma, what are you going to do? Sophie's hands had gone numb. She stared at Howard's face on the screen. Older, harder, successful in ways that made her own career as a junior architect at a small firm feel impossibly small, and felt the careful life she'd built start to crumble. He was back. After 5 years. After she'd finally stopped looking for him in every crowd, stopped jumping every time someone with his build walked past, stopped wondering if she'd made the right choice. Mama, who's that man? Oliver had abandoned his puzzle and was staring at the TV with the intense focus he brought to everything. Just someone Mama used to know, baby. He has eyes like mine. Sophie's breath caught. What? His eyes. They're gray. Like mine. Oliver looked up at her with those impossible eyes, Howard's eyes, and Sophie felt her world tilt sideways. Is he my daddy? Quick question for you watching. Would you tell your child the truth in this moment? Or would you lie? Let me know in the comments. Sophie's phone rang before she could answer. Unknown number. She almost didn't pick up. Hello. Ms. Andrews? This is Jennifer Wallace from Murphy Industries. I'm calling to schedule a meeting with Mr. Howard Murphy regarding the Waterfront Commons project. Our records show your firm submitted the winning architectural proposal. Mr. Murphy would like to discuss the details with you personally. Would tomorrow at 9 work? The room spun. The waterfront project. The one her firm had spent 6 months on. The one she'd poured her heart into because designing public spaces, places where families could gather and children could play, was the only thing besides Oliver that made her feel alive. She hadn't known Murphy Industries was the developer. Ms. Andrews. Yes, Sophie heard herself say. Tomorrow at 9 is fine. She hung up and stared at Oliver, who'd gone back to his puzzle but kept glancing at the TV where Howard's face had been. 24 hours. She had 24 hours to figure out how to face the man who'd shattered her heart, who'd walked away without looking back, who had no idea he had a son with his eyes and his mind and his stubborn refusal to accept the world as it was. 24 hours to decide if she was going to tell him the truth, or if some secrets were meant to stay buried. Sophie didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Oliver's soft breathing through the baby monitor she probably should have stopped using a year ago but couldn't bring herself to give up. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Howard's face on that TV screen. 3 in the morning, she gave up and crept into her home office. The converted second bedroom where she kept her drafting table and the architectural models she built when Oliver was asleep and she needed to remember who she was before. She became someone's mother. The waterfront project model sat on her desk. Weeks of work. A public park with a playground designed to be accessible for children of all abilities. A community pavilion for concerts and farmers markets. Walking paths through native gardens. A fountain where kids could splash in the summer. She designed it thinking about Oliver. About the kind of spaces he deserved to grow up in. And now Howard Murphy owned it. Her phone lit up with another text from Paloma. Can't sleep either, can you? Want me to come over? Sophie smiled despite everything. Paloma had been her lifeline these past 4 years. The friend who'd held her hand through labor when her own mother couldn't get time off work. Who babysat Oliver when Sophie had to work late. Who'd never once judged her for the choice she'd made. I'm okay. Just thinking. About what you're going to wear tomorrow, or about whether you're going to tell him he has a son. Sophie's fingers hovered over the keys. Both. Neither. I don't know, Paloma. Do you want my opinion? Always. He deserves to know. And more importantly, Oliver deserves to know his father. Sophie closed her eyes. She knew Paloma was right. Had always known, deep down, that she couldn't keep this secret forever. But knowing and doing were two very different things. What if he wants to take Oliver from me? What if he doesn't want Oliver at all? Both options terrified her equally. She set her phone down and pulled up the photo album on her laptop. The one she'd never showed anyone. The one filled with pictures from that year with Howard, before London, before the ending, before everything fell apart. Howard laughing at something she'd said at dinner. Howard asleep in her bed, looking younger and softer than he ever did awake. Howard standing on the beach at sunset, wind in his hair, looking at her like she was the only thing in his world that mattered. She'd believed that look. That had been her mistake. Sophie closed the laptop and went to Oliver's room. Her son slept sprawled across his twin bed, one arm hanging off the side, his favorite stuffed brachiosaurus clutched in the other hand. He looked like Howard when he slept. Same dark lashes. Same slight furrow between his brows, like even his dreams were complicated. I don't know what to do, baby, she whispered. I thought I'd have more time. I thought maybe he'd never come back, and you'd never have to know what we gave up. But Howard was back. And tomorrow Sophie would have to look him in the eye and pretend her world hadn't imploded the day he left. Tomorrow, she'd have to decide if the truth was worth the risk. Here's my question for you. Do you think Howard deserves to know? Is Sophie wrong for keeping this secret? Tell me in the comments because I want to know what you'd do. Sophie chose the black suit. Professional. Armor. The kind of outfit that said I'm here for business, not feelings. She spent 20 minutes on her makeup, covering the circles under her eyes that told the truth about her sleepless night. Another 15 on her hair, pulling it back into a sleek bun that made her look older than 36. More serious. Like someone who absolutely wasn't falling apart inside. Paloma showed up at 7:30 to watch Oliver before preschool. You look terrifying, Paloma said approvingly. Like you could buy and sell him. I can't even afford to fix my car's check engine light. He doesn't need to know that. Paloma gripped Sophie's shoulders and looked her dead in the eye. Listen to me. You are brilliant. Your design won that contract fair and square. You walk in there like you own the place, talk about your incredible work, and if you decide to tell him about Oliver, you do it on your terms. Not his. Mama, why are you wearing your fancy clothes? Oliver appeared in the hallway, dragging his brachiosaurus and looking concerned. Is it a special day? Sophie crouched down to his level, careful not to wrinkle her suit. Mama has a really important meeting for work. With someone who might help build that park I've been designing. The one with the big slides. The one with the big slides. Can I come see it when it's done? You'll be the first person I take there. I promise. Oliver threw his arms around her neck and squeezed tight. You're the best mama ever. Sophie's eyes burned. I love you, baby. Be good for Auntie Paloma. I'm always good. That is a lie, Paloma said cheerfully. Last week you convinced me that cookies were a vegetable. They have oats. Oats are plants. Sophie kissed the top of his head and stood before she could change her mind about everything. 20 minutes later, she was parking in the visitor lot of Murphy Industries. The building was new. All glass and steel, rising 12 stories above Charleston's historic district like a monument to wealth and ambition. Howard had built this in 5 years. Built an empire while Sophie had been building a life with a son he didn't know existed. Her hands shook on the steering wheel. She could turn around. Call in sick. Say there was an emergency. They'd reschedule and she'd have more time to prepare, to plan, to figure out what the hell she was going to say. Her phone buzzed. Text from her boss. Sophie. This is huge for our firm. Murphy chose us over 3 international firms. Make us look good in there. Right. This wasn't just about her and Howard. This was about her career. Her team. The junior architects who looked up to her. The project that could make her name in this industry. She could do this. She had to do this. Sophie grabbed her portfolio, checked her reflection one more time, and stepped out of the car into the warm spring morning. The lobby of Murphy Industries was exactly what she expected. Expensive marble, enormous modern art pieces, a receptionist who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Sophie Andrews, she said, voice steady despite her racing heart. I have a 9 o'clock with Howard Murphy. The receptionist smiled. Of course. Top floor. The executive assistant will meet you at the elevator. The elevator ride lasted an eternity. Sophie watched the numbers climb, 3, 4, 5, and tried to remember how to breathe. What if he didn't recognize her? 5 years was a long time. She'd changed. Had a baby. Cut her hair. Built a life he knew nothing about. What if he did recognize her and didn't care? What if the elevator doors opened, and there he was. Howard Murphy stood in the hallway outside the elevator, clearly heading somewhere, phone pressed to his ear, and for one frozen moment their eyes met. Sophie watched recognition slam into him like a physical blow. Watched his face go blank with shock, then something else. Something that might have been pain if Howard Murphy was still capable of feeling pain. He lowered his phone without looking away from her. I'll call you back, he said into it, voice rough. The elevator doors started to close. Sophie stepped forward on instinct, and suddenly they were standing 3 feet apart in a hallway that felt like it had all the air sucked out of it. Sophie. Her name in his voice. After 5 years of silence, after all those nights she'd lain awake wondering if he ever thought about her, if she'd meant anything at all. Howard. Stop right there. Let me ask you something. If you were Sophie, what would you say right now? Would you be angry? Professional. Would you tell him about Oliver immediately? Comment below. They stood there for what felt like hours but was probably 30 seconds. Sophie couldn't move. Couldn't think. Could only stare at the man who'd left her without looking back and feel everything she'd buried for 4 years come roaring back to life. You're the architect, Howard said finally. For the waterfront project. I didn't know you were the developer. I didn't know. He stopped. Started again. I didn't know you were still in Charleston. I never left. Something flickered across his face. I thought you were going to grad school. That program in Boston you were excited about. Plans change. Sophie, he looked at her like he was seeing a ghost. Like she was something he'd locked away in a box marked past mistakes, and finding her here was unraveling everything. We should talk. Not about the project. About Mr. Murphy. A woman appeared behind him, stunning, polished, probably his assistant. Your 9 o'clock is here. I know. Howard didn't look away from Sophie. She's standing right in front of me. The assistant's eyes widened slightly. Oh, I didn't realize you two already knew each other. We don't, Sophie said, finding her voice. Not anymore. We knew each other a long time ago. 5 years isn't that long. It is when you spend them in different countries. Howard's jaw tightened. Jennifer, clear my morning. All of it. But you have. Clear it. The assistant nodded and disappeared. Howard gestured down the hallway. My office. We need to talk about this. About everything. We need to talk about the waterfront project, Sophie corrected, gripping her portfolio like a shield. That's why I'm here. That's the only reason I'm here. Sophie, I'm not interested in rehashing ancient history, Howard. You made your choice 5 years ago. You left. We're done. But this project is important to me. To my firm. to this city. So let's be professionals and discuss the work. She saw the muscle in his jaw twitch. The same tell he'd always had when someone pushed back against him. Howard Murphy wasn't used to being told no. Fine, he said tightly. The work. Follow me. His office was corner suite, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Charleston Harbor. The view was breathtaking: historic church steeples, rainbow rose pastel houses, sailboats cutting across blue water. Sophie had designed 100 buildings in her imagination from views like this. Had dreamed of offices with windows this big where she could watch the city wake up every morning. Howard's desk was massive walnut, immaculate except for 3 computer monitors and a single framed photo facing away from her. Sit, he said, gesturing to the leather chairs across from his desk. Sophie sat, back straight, knees together, portfolio balanced on her lap. Every inch the professional. Howard stayed standing. He moved to the windows, hands in his pockets, and stared out at the view like it held answers. Your design was brilliant, he said quietly. That's why we chose it. Not because I knew you'd done it. I didn't. They kept the architectural firms anonymous during the selection process specifically to prevent bias. Thank you. The playground design especially. The accessibility features. The way you incorporated natural elements but kept it safe for young children. He stopped. It's personal. Most commercial architects don't design public spaces with that kind of care. Sophie's chest tightened. I believe children deserve beautiful places to play. Spaces that make them feel welcomed and safe and free to be themselves. You always did care about that. Making people feel safe. The words hung between them, loaded with meaning. Howard, what do you want from me? He turned from the window. His gray eyes, Oliver's eyes, fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. I want to know why you look at me like I destroyed you. You did. The words came out before she could stop them. Raw. Honest. Stripped of the professional distance she'd been clinging to, Howard flinched. Actually flinched. Sophie, you said we were temporary. You said it was better to end things before they got complicated. You got on a plane to London and you never looked back. Not once. 5 years. Howard, you never called, never emailed, never checked if I was okay. You told me not to contact you. I was hurt. Sophie stopped herself before she said pregnant. Before she told him everything. I needed space. That didn't mean I needed you to disappear completely. I thought it was what you wanted. You thought it was what was easier for you. Silence fell between them, thick and suffocating. You're right, Howard said finally, voice hollow. I took the coward's way out. I knew if I stayed in touch, I'd find a reason to come back. And I couldn't. The European expansion, it required everything I had. I couldn't be the partner you deserved while building that part of the company. So you made the choice for both of us. Yes. And now you're back. Now I'm back. Why? Howard moved away from the window, closer to his desk, closer to her. Because I built everything I set out to build in London. The European division is stable, profitable, running itself. And I was standing in my flat overlooking the Thames, celebrating our biggest quarterly earnings ever, and all I could think was, he stopped. I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd given up to get there. Sophie's heart hammered. Howard, I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know I burned that bridge. But seeing you walk out of that elevator, his voice cracked. I've regretted leaving you every single day for 5 years. And I need you to know that. What do you think? Is Howard being honest or is this manipulation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Sophie stood abruptly. The portfolio slid from her lap and she caught it, hands shaking. You don't get to do this, she said. You don't get to come back after 5 years and say things like that when I've spent every day trying to forget you existed. Have you forgotten I existed? That's not fair. None of this is fair, Sophie. I left. I hurt you. I know that. But did you really forget about me? She wanted to lie. Wanted to tell him she'd moved on completely, that he was nothing but an old memory that didn't matter anymore. But she'd never been good at lying to Howard. No, she whispered. I never forgot. Something flashed in his eyes. Hope, maybe. Or relief. Then let me make this right. However I can. Starting with this project. I want to work with you directly. I want to see your vision come to life exactly the way you designed it. That's not necessary. You have a whole development team. I'm the CEO. I decide what's necessary. Howard moved closer. Close enough that Sophie could smell his cologne, different from what he'd worn 5 years ago but still expensive, still him. Give me a chance to show you I'm not the same man who walked away. Please. Sophie's mind raced. Working directly with Howard would be torture. Seeing him every day, being reminded of everything they'd had and lost. But it would also give her time. Time to figure out when and how to tell him about Oliver. Time to see if he really had changed. Time to decide if she could trust him with their son. This is strictly professional, she said firmly. We work on the project. We keep everything else separate. No personal conversations. No rehashing the past. Just the work. Agreed. And if I feel at any point that you're interfering with my vision for the wrong reasons, I walk. My firm walks. You find another architect. That won't happen. Do we have an understanding? Howard extended his hand. We have an understanding. Sophie looked at his hand, strong, familiar, the same hand that had traced patterns on her skin and held her while she slept and waved goodbye from a taxi heading to the airport 5 years ago. She shook it. His skin was warm. The contact sent electricity through her that she absolutely could not acknowledge. When do we start? She asked, pulling her hand back. Today. Now. I want to tour the waterfront site with you. See it through your eyes. I have to be back by noon. I have. Sophie caught herself. I have an appointment. That works. Jennifer can drive us. We'll take the company car. 20 minutes later, Sophie found herself in the back of a Mercedes, sitting across from Howard while his assistant drove them toward the waterfront, and wondering how her carefully controlled life had spiraled into chaos so fast. Her phone buzzed. Text from Paloma. How's it going? Did you tell him? Is he freaking out? Are you freaking out? Sophie typed back one-handed. Did not tell him. Currently heading to project site with him. Also yes, freaking out. You have to tell him, Sophie. The longer you wait, the worse it gets. I know. But knowing and doing were still two very different things. The waterfront site was spectacular. 10 acres of undeveloped land right on Charleston Harbor, with views of Fort Sumter and the Arthur Ravenel Bridge. The kind of space that rarely came available in a city this historic, this desirable. The kind of space Sophie had dreamed of designing for since her first architecture class 10 years ago. She stood on the empty plot, wind whipping her hair loose from its bun, and felt her heart swell with possibility. Tell me what you see, Howard said beside her. Sophie closed her eyes, let herself feel the space. The potential. I see families, she said quietly. Parents pushing kids on swings while the sun sets over the harbor. Teenagers skateboarding on paths designed for it instead of getting yelled at for doing it wrong. Elderly couples sitting on benches watching sailboats. I see summer concerts and winter festivals and a place where everyone, regardless of income or background or ability, feels like they belong. When she opened her eyes, Howard was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. What? She asked. You haven't changed, he said softly. You still see the world like it's something beautiful that just needs the right design to show it. The world is beautiful. We just build ugly things on top of it. Not you. You build beautiful things. Sophie's chest tightened. Howard, I mean it professionally, he added quickly. Your work. Your vision. It's exceptional. Thank you. They walked the perimeter of the site, Sophie pointing out where each element of her design would go. The playground in the northwest corner to catch afternoon shade. The pavilion near the water. The gardens winding through everything, creating pockets of privacy in public space. Howard listened with intense focus, asking questions that showed he actually understood design, not just business. You know architecture, Sophie said, surprised. I took some classes at Cambridge during the expansion. Figured I should understand what I was building. Cambridge. Impressive. Lonely. The word slipped out before he seemed to catch it. I mean, the work was interesting. That's all. Sophie wanted to ask what he meant. Wanted to know if he'd dated anyone in London, if he'd found someone else, if she'd been the only one stuck in the past while he moved on. But that wasn't professional. That was personal. And they'd agreed, no personal. Her phone alarm went off. 11:30. I need to go, Sophie said. I have that appointment. Can we meet tomorrow? Go over the timeline and budget. I'll check my schedule and have my assistant contact Jennifer. Sophie. Howard caught her arm as she turned to go. His touch was gentle, but she felt it everywhere. This project, working together, I know it's complicated. But I meant what I said. I want your vision to succeed. Nothing else matters. She looked at his hand on her arm, at his face, so familiar and so changed, at the way he was looking at her like she still mattered. Okay, she said. Tomorrow. He let her go. Jennifer drove her back to Murphy Industries where Sophie's car was parked. The entire ride, Sophie's mind spun with everything she hadn't said, everything she still needed to figure out. She was pulling out of the parking lot when she saw it, small figure in the passenger seat of a car 2 rows over. Dark curls. Gray eyes visible even at this distance. Oliver. Her heart stopped. What was Oliver doing here? He should be at preschool. Paloma should have. Sophie's phone rang. Paloma's name flashed on the screen. Sophie, don't panic. Why is Oliver at Murphy Industries? The preschool called. He threw up. Probably just a stomach bug, he's fine now, but they couldn't reach you and I had to pick him up and I was on this side of town anyway for work and I texted you but you didn't respond and Oliver wanted to wait in the car while I ran into my office building and… Sophie wasn't listening anymore. She was staring at the building behind Oliver's car, the building where Howard Murphy was standing at his floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the parking lot, looking directly at the car where a 4-year-old boy with his eyes sat waiting. Oh no. Oh no. Do you think Howard can see Oliver from there? What do you think is going to happen next? Comment below. Sophie's hands were frozen on the steering wheel. She couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Could only watch in horror as Howard stood at that window, phone to his ear, staring down at the parking lot at Oliver's car Oliver. Her phone was ringing again. Paloma. Sophie answered without looking away from Howard's window. I'm so sorry, I should have called you first, Paloma, get Oliver out of there. Now. What? Why? Because Howard Murphy is standing at his office window looking right at you. Get in the car and drive away. Right now. Oh my God. Sophie. Now. Sophie watched Paloma sprint from the building entrance toward her car. Watched her throw herself into the driver's seat. Watched the car pull out of the spot and disappear down the street. And watched Howard remain at the window, perfectly still, for another 30 seconds before he turned away and disappeared into his office. Had he seen Oliver's face? Had he noticed the resemblance? 4-year-olds didn't look that much like their parents, right? People saw what they expected to see, and Howard had no reason to expect. Her phone rang again. Unknown number. Sophie stared at it. It rang 4 more times before she answered. Hello. Ms. Andrews. Jennifer's professional voice. Mr. Murphy asked me to call. He'd like to move tomorrow's meeting to today, if possible. He has some urgent questions about the project timeline. I can't. I have a family emergency. I understand. Mr. Murphy mentioned he could meet you anywhere that works. Your office, a coffee shop, even your home if that's more convenient given the emergency. He's quite flexible. He wanted to meet at her home, where Oliver's toys were scattered across the living room, where photos of her son covered the walls, where every surface screamed the truth she'd been hiding for 4 years. Tell Mr. Murphy I'll call him directly to reschedule, Sophie said. Thank you, Jennifer. She hung up before the assistant could respond. Her hands were shaking so hard she couldn't put the car in gear. She sat there in the parking lot, in full view of anyone looking down from Murphy Industries, and tried to remember how to think. Howard had looked at that car, had seen a child. Had he noticed the gray eyes, the dark curls? The way Oliver's face was his face, just smaller and 4 years old. Or was Sophie being paranoid? Was she seeing connections because she knew they existed, but Howard would never suspect? Why would he? She'd never told him. Had never given him any reason to think their relationship had created anything permanent. Her phone buzzed. Text from a number she didn't recognize. Sophie, it's Howard. Jennifer gave me your cell. I need to talk to you. Not about the project. Please. Her stomach dropped. He knew he'd seen Oliver, and he knew, or maybe he didn't know but he suspected, and he was about to ask questions Sophie wasn't ready to answer, and another text. I saw you in the parking lot. I saw the car next to yours. The child in the back seat. Sophie, I need you to call me. Sophie's vision blurred. This was it. The moment she'd been dreading and avoiding for 4 years. The moment when her carefully constructed life collided with the truth she'd buried. She couldn't do this. Not today. Not when she hadn't prepared, hadn't figured out what to say, hadn't. Her phone rang. Howard's new number. Sophie stared at it until it stopped. It immediately started ringing again. On the 3rd call, she answered. Howard. Who was that child, Sophie? His voice was careful, controlled. But she could hear something underneath it. Something sharp and dangerous. I don't know what you're talking about. The car next to yours. In my parking lot. There was a woman driving and a small child in the back seat. A boy, I think. Dark hair. I couldn't see his face clearly from here, but... He stopped. Sophie, you said you had an appointment. A family emergency. Is that child why you had to leave? Howard, this isn't appropriate. My personal life. How old is he? Sophie's mouth went dry. Howard. How old, Sophie? This is none of your business. How old? 4. She shouted it before she could stop herself. He's 4 years old and he's mine, and you don't get to ask me these questions. Silence on the other end. The kind of silence that felt like the world ending. 4 years old, Howard repeated quietly. Sophie, when's his birthday? I have to go. When is his birthday? November 10th. Are you happy now? He was born November 10th, and he's perfect, and he's mine, and you don't get to. She stopped. Too late. She'd said too much. Howard would do the math. Would count backwards 9 months from November and land on February. February 5 years ago, when they'd been together. When they'd spent that weekend at his beach house before everything fell apart. Sophie. His voice had changed. Gone quiet. Shaky. Is he mine? Wait. Stop right there. Let me ask you, do you think Sophie should tell him the truth right now? Over the phone. Or should she lie and buy herself time? What would you do? Comment below because I need to know. Sophie couldn't speak. Couldn't form words. Could only sit in her car while her entire world shattered around her for the 2nd time because of Howard Murphy. Answer me, Howard said, and his voice cracked. Please. Is that child, is he mine? Howard. Yes or no, Sophie? That's all I need. Yes or no. She could lie. Could tell him no, could say it was someone else, could protect the life she'd built and keep Oliver safe from a father who'd proven he could walk away without looking back. But she was so tired of lying, so tired of carrying this alone. Yes, she whispered. Yes, he's yours. The sound Howard made was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. "You had my child," he said, voice breaking. "You had my son, and you never told me. You left. You said you didn't want complications." "A child isn't a complication, Sophie. A child is." He stopped. She could hear him breathing hard. "I have a son. I have a 4-year-old son, and you kept him from me. You didn't want him. You made that very clear when you said, 'I said I didn't want complications in our relationship.' I never said, God, Sophie, I never said I wouldn't want my own child. How could you think? Because you left." Sophie was crying now, tears streaming down her face in full view of anyone who might be watching. "You ended things and got on a plane and never looked back. What was I supposed to do? Chase you to London with a positive pregnancy test and beg you to stay? You were supposed to tell me. I was supposed to protect my baby from a father who might reject him, who might see him as the complication you said you didn't want. I would never." Howard's voice broke completely. "I would never reject my own child. Never. How could you not know that? I didn't know anything anymore. You'd just shattered my heart. You'd just proven that everything I thought we had was temporary and meaningless to you. It was never meaningless. Then why did you leave?" Silence. "Howard, because I was scared," he said finally, voice raw. "Because loving you was the most terrifying thing I'd ever felt, and I didn't know how to build an empire while also being the man you deserved. So I chose the empire because that was something I knew how to do. And I've regretted it every day since." Sophie pressed her hand to her mouth, trying to hold back sobs. "That doesn't change anything," she managed. "You still left. You still chose work over us. What makes you think, if you'd known about Oliver, what makes you think you would have chosen differently? Because he's my son, Sophie. Because..." His voice broke. "What's his name? Howard, please. Please just tell me his name." "Oliver," Sophie whispered. "Oliver Murphy Andrews." She heard Howard's sharp intake of breath. "You gave him my name. As a middle name. He has my last name. But you gave him my name." Howard sounded like he was crying. "Even when you thought I'd never know he existed. You gave him my name. It was the only piece of you he'd ever have. Sophie, I need to see him. I need to meet him. Please." "No." "What?" "No. Howard. You don't get to just walk into his life because you found out he exists. He's 4 years old. He doesn't understand who you are or why you weren't there. And I won't let you hurt him the way you hurt me. I would never hurt him. You already have. By not being there. By..." Sophie stopped, trying to catch her breath. "I need time. Oliver needs time. This isn't something we can just, I have to think about what's best for him. I'm his father. Doesn't that give me some say in what's best for him? You're a stranger who happens to share his DNA. Being his father is something you have to earn." The words hung in the air between them, sharp and final. "How long?" Howard asked finally. "How long do I have to wait?" "I don't know. Sophie, I have to go. Oliver's sick. He needs me. Will you at least..." Howard's voice caught. "Will you send me a picture? Please. I just want to see his face." Sophie closed her eyes. She should say no. Should protect Oliver from this man who might disappoint him, who might walk away again. But the pain in Howard's voice was real. And maybe he deserved to at least see the son he'd never known existed. "I'll think about it," she said. "Sophie, please don't shut me out. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but he's my son. Let me try to be his father. However that looks. Whatever timeline you need. Just don't shut me out completely. I need to go. One more question. Please." Sophie waited. "Does he know about me?" Does Oliver know he has a father? Her chest ached. He asked about you this morning. For the first time. He saw you on TV and he said, her voice broke. He said you have eyes like his. And he asked if you were his daddy. Howard made a sound like something inside him had broken. What did you tell him? That his daddy lives far away and doesn't know about him. That I made a hard choice a long time ago. Tell him I'm here now, Howard said fiercely. Tell him his daddy's here and he wants to meet him more than anything in the world. Please, Sophie. Tell him that. I'll think about it, Sophie said again. Goodbye, Howard. She hung up before he could respond, and then she sat in her car in the Murphy Industries parking lot and cried until she couldn't cry anymore. Paloma's house was chaos when Sophie arrived. Oliver was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching cartoons. He looked up when Sophie walked in, and his face, his father's face, broke into a grin. Mama, I throwed up at school but I feel better now. Can I have ice cream? Maybe later, baby. Let Mama check you first. She sat beside him and felt his forehead. Cool. No fever. Probably just an upset stomach like Paloma said. Paloma said we were near your work, Oliver said. The big glass building. Is that where you make your park designs? No, baby. That's someone else's building. Can we go there? I liked looking at it. Maybe someday. Paloma said the man who owns it knows you. Sophie's eyes shot to Paloma, who was hovering in the kitchen doorway looking guilty. Did she? She said he's someone you knew before I was born. Someone important. Sophie's heart hammered. Oliver, why don't you watch your show? Mama needs to talk to Auntie Paloma for a minute. Oliver settled back into the couch cushions, already absorbed in whatever animated adventure was happening on screen. Sophie grabbed Paloma's arm and dragged her into the bedroom. What did you tell him? Sophie hissed. Nothing. I swear. He saw the building and asked questions and I said you knew the owner. That's it. I didn't say anything about Howard being his father, or Howard saw him, Paloma. He saw Oliver in your car and he called me and he knows. He knows everything. Paloma's eyes went wide. Oh my God. What did he say? That I should have told him. That he wants to meet Oliver. That he... Sophie's voice broke. He asked what Oliver's name was and when I told him, he started crying. Sophie. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle this. Oliver's been asking about his father and Howard's back and he wants to be involved, but what if he leaves again? What if he gets bored with fatherhood the same way he got bored with me? He didn't get bored with you. He was an idiot who chose work over love. But Sophie, he's Oliver's father. He has a right to know his son. Does he? Does biology give you rights when you weren't there? That's not fair. He didn't know Oliver existed. Because I didn't tell him. Because he left. They stared at each other, both breathing hard. You have to let him meet Oliver, Paloma said finally. Not for Howard. For Oliver. That little boy has been asking about his father his whole life. He deserves to know him. What if Howard hurts him? What if he doesn't? What if he's actually good at being a dad? What if he loves Oliver as much as you do? That's impossible. Sophie. Paloma grabbed her hands. You're scared. I get it. But you can't let fear rob Oliver of having a father who wants to know him. Who might actually be amazing for him. Sophie pulled away and sank onto Paloma's bed. He gave him his middle name, Paloma. Howard. I gave Oliver his father's name even though I thought Howard would never know. And when I told him today, he sounded so broken. Because he is broken. You both are. This secret has been breaking both of you for 4 years. So what do? You let him meet his son. Supervised. On your terms. And you see what happens. And if it goes badly, Then you deal with that. But Sophie, what if it goes well? What if this is the thing that gives Oliver what he's been missing? What if this is the thing that finally lets you both heal? Sophie looked at her friend, this woman who'd been there through everything, who'd held her hand through labor and late nights and every moment she'd almost broken under the weight of doing this alone. I'm so scared, Paloma. I know. But you're also the bravest person I know. You raised an incredible child by yourself. You built a career while being a single mother. You survived losing the love of your life and came out stronger. You can do this too. Sophie closed her eyes and thought about Oliver on that couch. About the way his face lit up when he'd seen Howard on TV. About how he'd asked if that man with eyes like his was his daddy. About how she'd promised herself, the day Oliver was born, that she'd always do what was best for her son. Even when it terrified her. Even when it meant facing Howard Murphy again. Okay, she whispered. Okay. I'll set up a meeting. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere Oliver feels safe. That's my girl. But Howard doesn't get to just be his father. He has to earn it. He has to prove he's not going anywhere. Absolutely. Sophie pulled out her phone and stared at Howard's number. The one that had called her 3 times. The one she'd been avoiding looking at. She typed out a message. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Waterfront Park by the Pineapple Fountain. Bring coffee. I'll bring Oliver. 30 minutes. That's all you get. The response came immediately. Thank you. I'll be there. Sophie, thank you. She put her phone away before she could change her mind. I told him he could meet Oliver tomorrow, Sophie said. What do I tell Oliver? How do I explain this? You tell him the truth. That his daddy's here and he wants to meet him. What if Oliver doesn't want to meet him? Then you respect that. But Sophie, I think you'll be surprised. Kids are more resilient than we give them credit for. Sophie went back to the living room. Oliver had fallen asleep on the couch, one hand clutching his brachiosaurus, the other tucked under his cheek. She sat beside him and watched him sleep, this perfect child who'd made her life impossibly hard and infinitely better all at once. Tomorrow, she'd have to tell him the truth. Tomorrow, Howard would meet the son he'd never known existed. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, Sophie could sit here in the quiet and hold on to this moment. Just her and Oliver. The way it had always been. Before the world got complicated again. What do you think is going to happen when Howard meets Oliver? Drop your predictions in the comments. And if you're still watching, thank you, we're getting to the good part now. Sophie barely slept again. She lay awake playing out 1,000 scenarios for tomorrow's meeting. Oliver would hate Howard. Oliver would love Howard. Oliver would be confused and scared, and Sophie would have to protect him from what? His own father. At 5 in the morning, she gave up on sleep and made coffee. Then she pulled out her laptop and found the folder she'd never been able to delete. Photos from that year with Howard. She scrolled through them slowly, letting herself really look. Howard laughing at dinner. Howard and Sophie on his boat. Howard asleep in her bed looking younger than she'd ever seen him awake. And then she found the one photo she'd never been able to look at without crying. The 2 of them at his beach house. The weekend that created Oliver. Howard was behind her, arms wrapped around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. Both of them smiling at the camera like they'd just discovered what happiness meant. She'd been so in love with him. So stupidly, completely, hopelessly in love. And he'd left anyway. Sophie's phone buzzed. Text from Howard. Are you awake? She stared at it. Typed back. Yes. I couldn't sleep. I keep thinking about tomorrow. About meeting him. What if he doesn't like me? Join the club. I've been worried about that for 4 years. Sophie, I need you to know, I'm not going to disappear again. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever Oliver decides, I'm here. I'm staying. You said that before. Right before you got on a plane to London. I was different then. Younger. Stupider. More afraid of feelings than failure. And now, Now I have a son I've never met and a woman I never stopped loving, and I'm more afraid of losing you both than anything else in the world." Sophie's breath caught. "Howard, I know. I know I don't get to just come back and say things like that. But it's true. It's been true for 5 years. I just didn't let myself admit it. You don't know me anymore. I'm not the same person I was. Tell me who you are now." Sophie looked at the clock. 5:30 in the morning. Oliver wouldn't be up for another hour. She could do this. Could tell Howard who she'd become in his absence. "I'm a mother. That's the biggest thing. Everything I do is for Oliver. My career, my choices, where I live, who I let into my life, it's all filtered through what's best for him." "That's incredible. You're incredible. I'm also tired. All the time. Single parenting is exhausting in ways I never imagined. You shouldn't have had to do it alone. But I did. And I survived. And I'm proud of that." "You should be. What else? Tell me more." Sophie found herself smiling despite everything. "I'm a better architect than I was. Having Oliver made me see spaces differently. I design for the way children experience the world now. Lower sight lines. Sensory considerations. Places that feel magical. Your waterfront design shows that. It's brilliant. Thank you. What else? Keep going. I want to know everything." "I cut my hair. I used to have it long, but Oliver went through a phase where he'd pull it when he was upset. So I cut it short, and now I actually like it better. I'm sure you look beautiful. I look tired. But that's parenthood." "Sophie, your turn. Who are you now?" "Honestly, I'm not sure. I built everything I set out to build in London. Made more money than I know what to do with. Expanded the company into 15 countries. And at the end of every day, I'd go back to my flat and realize I had no one to share any of it with." "You must have dated." "A few times. Nothing serious." "No one," he paused. "No one was you." "Howard, I know. But you asked who I am now, and that's part of it. I'm someone who let the best thing in his life walk away because he was too scared to fight for it." "I didn't walk away. You ended things." I know, and I'm sorry. I've said it 100 times, but I'll say it 1,000 more if it helps. I'm sorry, Sophie, for all of it." Sophie stared at his words on her screen. Part of her wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to the hurt because it was safer than hope. But another part, the part that had loved him so completely 5 years ago, wanted to believe he meant it. Wanted to believe people could change. "What if Oliver doesn't like you? Then I'll keep trying. Every day. For as long as it takes." "What if he loves you immediately and then you decide fatherhood is too hard and you leave?" "That won't happen. You don't know that." "Yes, I do. Sophie, I've spent 5 years building companies and making deals and traveling the world. And the only thing I've ever built that mattered was what we had together. I lost that. I'm not losing my son too." Sophie's eyes burned with tears. "He's amazing, Howard. He's so smart and funny and kind. He loves dinosaurs and building things and asking questions about everything. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. Can I see him? Just a picture? Please." Sophie hesitated. Then she opened her photos and found one from last week. Oliver at the park, laughing as he came down a slide. His whole face lit up with joy. She sent it before she could change her mind. 3 seconds later, her phone rang. "Howard. He looks like me." Howard's voice was thick with emotion. His eyes. His smile. "Even the way he's laughing, that's exactly how I look in old photos." "Sophie, he's perfect." "I know. Send me more. Please. I need to see. I need to know him. Howard. Please." Sophie scrolled through her photos. Oliver's first day of preschool. Oliver covered in paint from an art project. Oliver asleep with his dinosaur collection. Oliver making silly faces at the camera. She sent them all. "Thank you," Howard whispered. "Thank you for showing me what I missed. For," his voice broke, "for raising him. For doing it alone. For being strong enough for both of us. I didn't have a choice. You always had a choice. You could have, God, Sophie, you could have had an abortion. You could have given him up for adoption. You could have done so many things that would have been easier. But you chose to have him. To raise him. To give him the best life you could. That took courage I can't even comprehend." Sophie wiped her eyes. "I looked at the ultrasound and I knew. I knew I wanted him more than anything. Even if it meant doing it alone. You shouldn't have had to. But I did. And we're okay. We're happy. Our life isn't perfect, but it's ours and it's good. I want to be part of that life. However you'll let me. Whatever it looks like. One step at a time, Howard. Tomorrow, you meet him. That's all I can promise right now. That's enough. For now, that's enough." They stayed on the phone for another hour. Talking about Oliver. About London. About Charleston. About everything and nothing. And when Sophie finally hung up to get Oliver ready for the day, she felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. Quick question. Do you think Sophie is making the right choice letting Howard meet Oliver? Or should she have made him wait longer? Let me know in the comments. "Oliver, baby, Mama needs to talk to you about something important." They were sitting at the kitchen table, Oliver working his way through pancakes while Sophie tried to figure out how to tell a 4-year-old that his father, the one he'd asked about yesterday, was about to become real. "Am I in trouble?" "No, sweetie. Nothing like that. Remember yesterday when you asked about your daddy?" Oliver's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "The man on TV? Yes. His name is Howard Murphy. And Sophie took a deep breath. "He's in Charleston now. And he'd like to meet you." Oliver's eyes went wide. "My daddy wants to meet me?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because you're his son and he loves you." "But he doesn't know me." Sophie's chest ached. "You're right. He doesn't know you yet. But he wants to. If that's okay with you." Oliver set his fork down carefully. His little face was so serious. So much like Howard's when he was thinking through something complicated. "Will he like me?" "Oh baby." Sophie pulled him into her lap. "He's going to love you. I promise." "How do you know?" "Because there's nothing about you not to love. You're kind and smart and funny and brave. Anyone would be lucky to know you. Is that why you picked him to be my daddy?" Sophie's eyes burned. "I picked him because I loved him very much. And even though things got complicated between us, I've never regretted having you. Not for one single second." "Do you still love him?" The question hit her like a punch to the chest. Sophie stopped. "It's complicated, baby." That's what grown-ups say when they don't want to answer. "You're too smart for your own good, you know that." Oliver grinned. "Auntie Paloma says I get that from you." "Auntie Paloma is right." Sophie kissed the top of his head. "So, do you want to meet your daddy today?" Oliver thought about it for a long moment. "Will you be there? The whole time? I won't leave you alone with him until you're ready." "Okay." Oliver nodded decisively. "I want to meet him." "But Mama." "Yes. What if he doesn't like dinosaurs?" Sophie laughed despite the tears threatening to spill over. "Then he'll learn to like them. For you. Good. Because dinosaurs are important. The most important." 2 hours later, Sophie was parking near Waterfront Park with Oliver strapped in his booster seat, clutching his favorite Brachiosaurus and looking nervous. "What if I say something dumb?" Oliver asked. You won't. What if he thinks I'm boring? Impossible. What if? Oliver. Sophie turned in her seat to look at him. Your daddy is probably more nervous than you are. He wants you to like him so badly. So just be yourself, okay? That's all he needs. Okay. Oliver took a deep breath. I'm ready. Sophie was absolutely not ready. But she got out of the car anyway, helped Oliver out, and took his hand as they walked toward the fountain. Howard was already there. Standing by the water, hands in his pockets, staring at the fountain like it held answers. He was wearing jeans and a simple gray t-shirt instead of a suit. Trying to look approachable, Sophie realized. Trying to be someone a 4-year-old wouldn't find intimidating. She squeezed Oliver's hand. That's him, baby. Howard must have sensed them approaching because he turned. And the second his eyes landed on Oliver, his entire face transformed. Sophie watched him take in every detail. The dark curls. The gray eyes. The small hand clutching hers. The dinosaur toy. Everything. And then Howard's eyes filled with tears. He dropped to his knees on the pavement without seeming to care about his expensive jeans. Getting down to Oliver's level. Hi, he said, voice rough. I'm Howard. I'm your... He glanced at Sophie. I'm your dad. Oliver stared at him with wide eyes. You have eyes like mine. I know. I saw you on TV yesterday and thought the same thing. You saw me on TV. No, buddy. You saw me on TV. But I saw you in a parking lot. And I noticed we have the same eyes. Mama says we look the same. We do. Howard's voice cracked. We look exactly the same. You're... He stopped, clearly struggling. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Oliver considered this. Did you really not know about me? I didn't. And I'm sorry about that. I should have been there your whole life. Why weren't you? Because your mama and we had some grown-up problems. And I made some really bad choices. But I'm here now. And if you'll let me, I'd like to get to know you. Mama says you live far away. I used to. But I moved back to Charleston. I live here now. Forever. Forever. Oliver looked at Sophie. Is that true, Mama? Sophie nodded, not trusting her voice. Oliver turned back to Howard. Do you like dinosaurs? Howard's face broke into a smile. I don't know much about them. But I'd love to learn. Would you teach me? This is a brachiosaurus. Oliver held up his toy. He eats plants and he's really tall. Taller than a building. Wow. That's incredible. Do you want to hold him? Howard's hands were shaking as he took the toy. Thank you for trusting me with him. His name is Bronto. But that's actually a different dinosaur, so it's scientifically wrong. But I like it anyway. Bronto is a perfect name. They stared at each other for a long moment. Father and son. Meeting for the first time. Both nervous. Both hopeful. Can I hug you? Howard asked quietly. Oliver looked at Sophie again. She nodded. Okay, Oliver said. Howard wrapped his arms around his son for the first time. Sophie watched his face crumple, watched him bury it in Oliver's hair, watched his shoulders shake with silent sobs. Oliver hugged him back, tiny arms tight around Howard's neck. Don't cry, Daddy, Oliver said. It's okay. I'm here now. And Sophie had to turn away before they saw her crying too. I'm crying writing this. Are you crying watching this? Let me know in the comments. And please don't leave yet because what happens next changes everything. They spent 2 hours at the park. 2 hours that should have been 30 minutes, but neither Howard nor Oliver seemed to notice the time. Howard pushed Oliver on the swings. Helped him across the monkey bars. Sat on a bench while Oliver explained in excruciating detail the difference between a triceratops and a styracosaurus. And through it all, Sophie watched. Watched Howard transform from CEO to father. Watched him laugh at Oliver's jokes. watched him listen with genuine interest to stories about preschool and friends and the ant that Oliver had found yesterday that was carrying something twice its size. Watched him fall completely in love with their son. "Mama!" Oliver ran over, breathless. "Daddy says he has an office with a really cool view. Can we go see it?" Sophie's eyes met Howard's over Oliver's head. "Only if your mama says it's okay," Howard said carefully. "And only if she comes with us. Please, Mama? Please." Sophie should say no. Should stick to the boundaries she'd set. 30 minutes. That's what she'd promised. But Oliver was happy. Happier than she'd seen him in, maybe ever. And Howard was looking at her with such desperate hope that it hurt. "Okay," she heard herself say. "But just for a little while." Oliver cheered and grabbed both their hands. "This is the best day ever." They walked to Howard's car, a sleek black SUV that made Sophie's beat-up sedan look even more pathetic by comparison, and Howard buckled Oliver into the back seat with surprising competence for someone who'd never done it before. "You're good at that," Sophie said quietly. "I watched 3 YouTube videos this morning on how to properly install a car seat." Howard's ears turned red. "Turns out I need to buy one. For my car. If Oliver ever wants to ride with me again. He will. Look at him." Oliver was already chattering away in the back seat, telling his Brachiosaurus about his new daddy. The drive to Murphy Industries was short. Howard parked in his private spot and led them to the executive elevator. "This only goes to the top floor," he explained to Oliver. "It's faster than the regular elevators." "Cool. Mama, can we get one of these? Our apartment building doesn't have an elevator, baby." "Oh." Oliver processed this. Then brightened. "But we have stairs. And stairs are good exercise." Howard smiled. "That's a great attitude." The elevator doors opened on the top floor. Jennifer was at her desk, and her eyes went wide when she saw Oliver. "Jennifer, this is Oliver," Howard said. "Oliver, this is Jennifer. She helps me with my work." "Hi." Oliver waved. "I'm 4 years old. It's very nice to meet you, Oliver." Jennifer's voice was warm. "Mr. Murphy, your afternoon meetings. Cancel them. All of them. For the rest of the week." Jennifer's eyebrows shot up. "All of them. I have more important things to do." Howard looked at Oliver. "Come on, buddy. Let me show you my office." Sophie followed them down the hallway, her heart racing. This was Howard's world. This building, this company, this empire he'd chosen over her 5 years ago. And now he was canceling meetings to spend time with their son. Howard's office was exactly as she remembered from yesterday. Enormous windows. Stunning view. But this time, Sophie noticed details she'd missed. A photo on his desk, facing away from visitors, that she'd bet anything was of her. A small sketch she'd done years ago of Charleston Harbor, now framed on his wall. A book about architecture on his shelf with her name written in the margin. He'd kept pieces of her, even when he'd walked away. "Wow," Oliver breathed, running to the windows. "You can see everything from here. Pretty cool, right?" Howard crouched beside him. "See that church steeple? That's St. Michael's. It's one of the oldest buildings in Charleston. Mama designs buildings. Did she design that one?" "No, that one's much older. But your mama designs incredible buildings. She's really talented." Oliver beamed with pride. "I know. She's the best." Howard's eyes found Sophie's across the room. "Thank you," he mouthed. Sophie nodded, throat tight. "Daddy, what do you do here?" Oliver asked. "I run the company. That means I make decisions about what buildings we build and where we build them." "Like Mama. Your mama designs the buildings. I just decide which ones to build. Her job is much more important." "That's true," Oliver agreed seriously. "Mama's job is very important." Sophie laughed despite herself. Thanks for the support, baby. Howard stood and moved closer to her. Close enough that she could smell his cologne. Close enough that she had to fight the urge to lean into him. He's perfect, Howard said quietly. Sophie, you did such an incredible job raising him. I had good material to work with. Half of him is you. The best half is you. The kindness. The curiosity. The way he sees the world, that's all you. Howard, I know we have a lot to figure out. Custody schedules and legal things and, he stopped. But right now, in this moment, I just want to say thank you. For giving me this. For letting me meet him. For not shutting me out completely. I thought about it. I know. You would have been justified. But I kept thinking about what Paloma said. That Oliver deserves to know his father. That biology might not make you his dad, but love can. I already love him. I've loved him since the moment you told me he existed. Before I even saw his face. I can tell that Sophie's breath caught as Howard's words hung in the air. I already love him. Daddy. Oliver's voice broke the moment. Come look at this boat. Howard moved back to the window where Oliver was pointing at a sailboat in the harbor. Sophie watched them together, the same profile, the same gestures, the same way they tilted their heads when they were interested in something. How had she ever thought she could keep them apart? Her phone buzzed. Text from her boss. Sophie, Murphy's assistant, just called. She said Howard canceled all his meetings for the week? What's going on? Is everything okay with the project? Sophie typed back quickly. Everything's fine. Family matter on his end. Project timeline unchanged. Family matter. The words felt strange. True, but strange. Mama, I'm hungry, Oliver announced. Can we get lunch? Sophie checked her watch. Almost 1 o'clock. They'd been here for over an hour. We should probably go, baby. Let your daddy get back to work. Actually, Howard said quickly, I was hoping you'd both have lunch with me. There's a great Italian place nearby. They have the best breadsticks. Do you like breadsticks, Oliver? I love breadsticks. Then it's settled. Howard grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair. Jennifer, I'm leaving for the day. Forward everything to my cell. For the day. Jennifer's voice filtered through the intercom, shocked. But it's only 1 p.m. I have more important things to do. Lunch turned into 3 hours. 3 hours of Oliver charming the entire restaurant staff, of Howard learning about dinosaurs and preschool politics, of Sophie watching the two of them together and feeling her carefully constructed walls start to crumble. Mama, can Daddy come to my birthday party? Oliver asked around a mouthful of pasta. Sophie's heart stopped. Oliver's birthday wasn't until November. 7 months away. That's a long time from now, baby. So, I want him there. Oliver looked at Howard. You'll come, right? I wouldn't miss it for anything in the world, Howard said, voice thick. I promise. You can't break promises, Oliver informed him seriously. Mama says broken promises hurt people's feelings. Your mama's right. And I will never break a promise to you. Oliver seemed satisfied with this. He went back to his pasta, leaving Sophie and Howard staring at each other over the table. 7 months. Howard was planning to be here in 7 months. Planning to be part of Oliver's life for birthdays and holidays and ordinary Tuesdays. Planning to stay. By the time they left the restaurant, Oliver was yawning and leaning against Howard's leg like he'd known him his whole life instead of just a few hours. Someone needs a nap, Sophie said gently. I'm not tired, Oliver protested, even as his eyes drooped. How about I drive you both home? Howard offered. We can pick up your car later. Sophie should say no. Should maintain boundaries. Should protect herself from getting too comfortable with this. But Oliver was already half asleep and her car was 6 blocks away and she was so tired of doing everything alone. Okay, she said. Thank you. Howard buckled Oliver into the back seat with the same careful attention he'd shown that morning. Oliver was asleep before they'd gone 2 blocks. "What's your address?" Howard asked. Sophie gave it to him, watching his face as he processed the neighborhood. Not the worst part of Charleston, but definitely not the best. Not where someone like Howard Murphy would ever live. "It's small," Sophie said defensively. "But it's clean and safe and close to Oliver's preschool." "I wasn't judging. Your face was. My face was thinking about how you did all this alone. How you raised him in a small apartment while working full-time and," his voice cracked, "I should have been there. I should have been helping with rent and groceries and middle-of-the-night wake-ups and everything. You didn't know. That doesn't make it okay." They drove in silence for a few minutes. Sophie snuck a glance at the back seat. Oliver was completely out, mouth open, head lolling to the side. "He's beautiful when he sleeps," Howard said softly, eyes on the rearview mirror. "He looks like you. He looks like the best parts of both of us." Sophie's apartment complex came into view. Howard pulled into a visitor spot and turned off the engine. "Let me carry him up," he said. "You grab your purse. Howard, please. Let me help. Even if it's just this." Sophie nodded, throat tight. Howard unbuckled Oliver and lifted him with surprising gentleness. Oliver barely stirred, just snuggled into Howard's chest like he belonged there. Sophie led them up 2 flights of stairs to her apartment. She unlocked the door and gestured Howard toward Oliver's room. "Second door on the left." Howard carried Oliver to his bed and laid him down carefully, pulling the dinosaur comforter up to his chin. He stood there for a long moment, just watching their son sleep. Sophie joined him in the doorway. "I missed so much," Howard whispered. His first word. His first steps. The first time he said Mama. "Everything. I know. Tell me, please. Tell me everything." So Sophie did. Standing in the doorway of their son's room, she told Howard about the pregnancy, the morning sickness that lasted all day, the way she'd cried when she first heard his heartbeat. About the labor that took 18 hours and how Paloma had held her hand through every contraction. About the moment they'd placed Oliver in her arms and she'd looked at his tiny face and fallen completely in love. She told him about the first night home when Oliver wouldn't stop crying and she'd called her mother sobbing, convinced she was doing everything wrong. About the first time. Oliver smiled at her, really smiled, not just gas, and how it made everything worth it. About his first word, ball, his first steps, at 11 months, early like his father had been. The first time he'd said, "I love you, Mama," without prompting. Howard listened to all of it with tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry," he kept saying. "I'm so sorry. I know. But Howard, we can't change the past. We can only decide what happens next." "What do you want to happen next?" Sophie looked at Oliver sleeping peacefully, then at Howard's face, so full of pain and hope and love. "I want you to be his father. Really be his father. Not just visits and birthday presents. The hard stuff too. The tantrums and the stomach bugs and the nights when he has nightmares. All of it. I want that too. More than anything. But I need to know you're not going anywhere. Because if you hurt him, if you walk away from him the way you walked away from me, I will never forgive you." "I won't. I swear to you, Sophie. I will be here for him every single day for the rest of my life. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." They moved to the living room. Sophie made tea while Howard looked at the photos covering her walls. Oliver at every age, every milestone, every moment of the life Howard had missed. "I want to give you money," Howard said suddenly. "Back pay for everything you've spent on him. Child support for the years I missed. All of it. Howard, please. Let me do this. Let me at least help financially. I don't need your money. But you shouldn't have had to struggle. I didn't struggle. We're fine. Happy. I don't want your guilt money." Howard flinched. "It's not guilt money. He stopped. Started again. It's me trying to take responsibility. Trying to be his father in every way I can. Sophie softened slightly. Okay. But not back pay. Child support going forward, if you want. Something reasonable. And a college fund. That's it. Deal. Howard pulled out his phone. Give me your bank information. I'll have Jennifer set up automatic transfers. Howard. Please, Sophie. Let me do this one thing without fighting me on it. She gave him the information, watching as he typed rapidly on his phone. Done, he said. First payment will hit tomorrow. And I'm setting up a trust fund for his college. Full tuition wherever he wants to go, plus living expenses. That's too much. It's not nearly enough. They sat in silence for a moment, tea cooling between them. I want to see him regularly, Howard said. Not just weekends. Real time. Can I pick him up from preschool sometimes? Take him to dinner? Have him sleep over once he's comfortable with that? Yes. To all of it. But slowly, okay? Let him get used to having you around first. Of course. Howard hesitated. What do we tell people? About us. About why I wasn't here before. We tell them the truth. That we had a relationship, it ended before I knew I was pregnant, and now you're back and we're figuring out co-parenting. Is that all we're figuring out? Sophie's breath caught. What do you mean? I mean, Howard set his tea down and moved closer. Close enough that Sophie could see the flecks of dark in his gray eyes. I meant what I said yesterday. I never stopped loving you. And seeing you with Oliver, seeing the incredible woman and mother you've become. Sophie, I'm more in love with you now than I was 5 years ago. Howard, I'm not asking for anything. I know I have to earn your trust back. I know I hurt you and that doesn't just go away. But I need you to know, I'm here. Not just for Oliver. For you too. However you'll have me. Sophie's hands were shaking. I can't do this right now. This is too much. Everything is happening too fast, and I can't think straight and... Hey! Howard took her hands gently. Breathe. We don't have to figure everything out today. We have time. Do we? What if you wake up tomorrow and realize this is too hard? That you don't actually want to be tied down with a kid and an ex-girlfriend who comes with a lot of baggage? That won't happen. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Sophie, I spent 5 years building an empire and hating every minute of it because you weren't there. I'm not making that mistake again. People don't change, Howard. Some people do. When they have good enough reasons. He squeezed her hands. You and Oliver, you're the best reasons I've ever had. Before Sophie could respond, Oliver's voice called out from his room. Mama. Where's Daddy? Howard's face lit up. He called me Daddy. He's 4. He adapts fast. Can I go? He's asking for you. Howard practically ran to Oliver's room. Sophie followed more slowly, leaning against the doorframe to watch. Hey buddy, Howard said softly. I'm right here. I had a dream about dinosaurs, Oliver said sleepily. You were there too. We were looking for fossils. That sounds like a great dream. Can we do that for real? Look for fossils. Absolutely. There's a dinosaur museum about 2 hours from here. We could go this weekend if your mama says it's okay. Oliver's eyes lit up. Mama, can we go to the dinosaur museum with Daddy? Sophie smiled despite the tears threatening to spill over. Sure, baby. That sounds fun. This is the best day of my whole life, Oliver declared. Then he looked at Howard seriously. Are you staying for dinner? Howard glanced at Sophie. She nodded. I'd love to stay for dinner, Howard said. Good. Because Mama makes the best spaghetti and you have to try it. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. Oliver talked non-stop, showing Howard every toy and book and drawing he'd ever made. Howard listened to all of it with rapt attention, asking questions and laughing at Oliver's jokes and looking at Sophie like she'd given him the entire world. After dinner, they gave Oliver a bath together, Sophie supervising while Howard learned how to rinse shampoo without getting soap in Oliver's eyes. Then bedtime stories, with Oliver insisting Howard sit on one side of the bed and Sophie on the other. "This is how families read stories," Oliver explained. "I saw it on TV." Sophie's chest ached. Oliver had been watching families on TV and wanting what they had. Wanting what she'd been unable to give him. Until now. Howard read 3 dinosaur books with different voices for each character. Oliver giggled so hard he got the hiccups. "Okay, baby," Sophie said finally. "Time for sleep. You've had a big day. Will Daddy be here tomorrow?" Oliver asked, eyes already drooping. "If he wants to be," Sophie said carefully. "I'll be here," Howard promised. "I'll come by after your preschool if that's okay with your mama." Oliver looked at Sophie. She nodded. "Okay," Oliver said, satisfied. Then, in the most natural voice in the world, "Love you, Daddy." Howard's breath caught. He looked at Sophie with panic in his eyes, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to say it back. She nodded again. "I love you too, Oliver," Howard said, voice breaking. So much." Oliver was asleep within minutes. Howard sat on the edge of the bed, just watching him breathe. "Come on," Sophie said gently. "Let him sleep." They went back to the living room. Sophie expected Howard to leave, but he sank onto her second-hand couch and buried his face in his hands. "Howard. He said he loves me." Howard's shoulders shook. "I've known him for 1 day and he said he loves me." Kids love easily. It's one of the best things about them. "I don't deserve it." "Maybe not. But you have it anyway. The question is, what are you going to do with it?" Howard looked up at her, face streaked with tears. "I'm going to be the father he deserves. I'm going to show up every single day. I'm going to learn about dinosaurs and preschool drama and whatever else he cares about. I'm going to love him so much he never doubts it. Not for 1 second. Good. And you, Sophie. What do I have to do to earn your love back?" Sophie sat beside him on the couch. Not touching, but close. "You hurt me, Howard. You broke my heart and left me to pick up the pieces while growing a human inside me. You don't just come back from that in a day." "I know. But," Sophie took a breath, "I see how you are with Oliver. How you dropped everything for him. How you're looking at him like he's the most precious thing in the world. And I think, maybe you really have changed." "I have. I swear I have." "Then prove it. Not with words or money or grand gestures. Just show up. Be consistent. Be the man I thought you were 5 years ago." "I will. Every day. For as long as it takes." They sat in silence for a moment, both staring at their hands. "I should go," Howard said finally. "It's late." "You're tired." "Yeah." But neither of them moved. "Sophie, don't." She held up a hand. "Don't say anything else tonight. My emotions are all over the place and I can't handle any more big declarations right now." "Okay." Howard stood. "Tomorrow then. I'll come by after Oliver's preschool. 3 o'clock. He gets out at 2.